Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Welcome to online class. Today we are going to discuss a very interesting topic and which is very important also for 10th standard, and the lesson is metals and non-metals. I hope you are all aware of the topic metals and non-metals, children, because you would have learnt in your lower classes about the basic concepts of metals and non-metals. Let us go in detail about this metals and non-metals by learning the properties and uses of metals and non-metals. So, if you take metals and non-metals, in this lesson we are going to learn the physical and chemical properties of metals, non-metals physical and chemical properties, uses of metals and non-metals, metal reactivity series, which means how the metals, that means how metals can be categorized based on the reactivity, and then formation of ionic compounds, because whenever metals combine with the non-metals, they form such compounds which are ionic in nature, and difference between covalent compounds and ionic compounds. Then metallurgy processes, where the metals will be available and how can they be extracted, all that, about all that we are going to learn in detail in this lesson. If you take, the elements can be classified into three different types. Normally there are elements, 118 elements, well known elements are there. Among that 118 elements, we have the categories like metals, metalloids and non-metals. So, when we categorize these elements, on what basis they can be categorized? Based on the physical properties and their chemical properties, and also the tendency of these elements, either they donate electron or gain electrons. Okay? When you take metals, these are the well known metals, you know: copper, lead, tin, nickel, steel and zinc. These are some of the metals which are well known metals. Okay? And we are going to learn in detail about the physical properties of these metals. Metals are usually malleable. What does mean by malleable? They can be made into thin sheets. Metals are ductile, which means from the thin sheets we can draw wires of the metals, which can be used for many purposes. Metals are good conductors of heat and electricity. Normally, as metals have the strong tendency as well as they have the free electrons, they are able to conduct heat as well as electricity. Then metals are lustrous. Normally, you would have seen, children, metals will be having the shiny surface. Due to that shiny surface only, normally they will get tarnished very soon. Metals are generally hard and strong. For example, iron. If you take iron, is a strong metal and also hard. Metals are solids at room temperature. Normally, whenever you take metals, no, most of the metals are available in solid state, but some of the metals will be in liquid state, and they can be converted into vapor phase also by some chemical processes. As they are hard and strong, normally they will have high melting and high boiling point. Metals are sonorous. That means whenever they are beaten or hammered, no, they will be giving ringing sound. They will be producing a strong ringing sound. Metals usually have silvery or grey color appearance. Okay, the color of the metals, most of the metals will be having grey color, as well as they will be having silvery color, and some of the metals like gold will be having yellow, bright yellow color. And if you go in detail about the physical properties of the metals, what are the reasons, why do they have such properties? If you check, metals, they have shiny appearance. So, the shiny appearance is due to the electrons, that means normally the electrons will be freely moving, so that they will be having the shiny appearance, and due to the compact packing of the atoms, they have high density. Normally they will be having high density. And why that high density is attained by the metals? Because of the compact packing of the atoms. The atoms are so close, tightly packed, so that they will be having high density. And they will be good conductors of electricity as well as heat. Normally metals will be having free electrons on the surface. So, the free electrons will be moving around. So, due to the presence of the free electrons only, they are able to conduct electricity as well as heat. And if you take the ductile and malleability are the main properties of the metals because they can bend. That means what? They can be made into thin sheets by hammering. When it is hammered, when the metal is hammered, what happens? They will be made into thin sheet. As much as possible they can be stretched. Okay, and from the stretchable property they will have the property of ductile. That means thin wires of those metals can be drawn without breaking. That is very, very important because normally non-metals, while it is hammered it will get break. Okay. And high melting and high boiling point, it is due to the high density because of the compact packing of the atoms. The atoms are so closer to each other so that the metallic bond, that means the bond between the atoms will be very stronger. So, normally they require more amount of energy to break up the bond. So, they possess a high melting and high boiling point. Okay, because the strong force of attraction between the atoms will be very strong. And metals normally they will be strong and tough. Okay, and solid state. Normally most of the metals are solid in state because of the compact packability of the atoms. Okay, and the packable nature of the atoms all you will learn in your higher class in detail, children. Now, only metal which is available in liquid state is mercury. Okay, mercury which is a metal, but it will be available in liquid state, and some of the metals are there, they will be started melting even under the room temperature also, some of the metals like cesium and gallium, right, but they will not be used so frequently, very rarely used metals they are all. Next physical property, the metals are malleable. So, already I told you that malleability is the main characteristic property of the metal where the metals can be made into thin sheets by hammering without breaking. So, what is malleable? Metals can be beaten into thin sheets with a hammer. Actually, whenever hammer is used, so metals are malleable. So, whenever metals are beaten into thin sheets, okay, see when it is hammered, the metals are hammered, they will be made into thin sheets, and this is the very important property which allows the metal to be hammered into thin sheets, which is called as malleability. The property is called as what? Malleability. Okay, this is a very important property of metals where we can study about the atomic structures of the metals as well as the electron distribution of the metals. So, you will be learning in detail about all these property in your higher class, children. And the next property if you take, it is ductility. Before we go into the ductility, let us learn how the metals are made into thin sheets. Let us take gold, okay, which is the most malleable metal. That is why it is used in the manufacture of, that means making ornaments. Ornaments can be made using gold because it is highly malleable. So, can be made into thin sheet, and whatever shape we need, it can be molded into that particular shape. If you take gold, 1 gram, just 1 gram of gold can be beaten into a sheet with an area of about 6.7 square feet. That much lengthier sheet we will get by hammering the gold metal. Okay. So, silver is also one of the other metal which can be made into thin sheets. You would have seen silver which is used to decorate the sweets. Okay. So, on the sweets, you could see the silver sheets which is used for decorating the sweets. As it is mostly malleable, silver can be used for decorating the sweets. And aluminium foil also, you would have seen aluminium foil which can be used for covering the food materials, okay, food packs like this, as well as they will be used for packing the food materials, also in the cap, bottle cap of milk bottle. Okay. So, because of the malleability nature, these metals can be made into particular shapes and they can be used for different purposes. And copper is also one of the metal which has high malleable capacity. That is why utensils can be made. Utensils and containers, you could have seen the water bottles made of copper. Okay, so whatever the shape we need, that can be molded and made into utensils and other containers. So, these properties, by studying all these properties, we come to know that these metals can also be used as utensils, and because of the high conductivity of electricity as well as heat, they can be used as cooking utensils also. So, iron, actually if you compare iron with other metals, the malleable nature of iron is somewhat less only compared to copper, gold and silver. It has less malleable capacity only, because it is a hard metal as well as it has the tough nature also compared to the other metals, isn't it? So, that iron can be used for making sheets, iron sheets, and also can be used for making boxes, iron, made of iron, okay, and tray which is made of iron, and water tanks. In some places you could have seen the water tanks which is made up of iron, and it is an alloy also, alloy of iron, so that corrosion can be avoided. And buckets, buckets can be made of iron to draw water from the wells, okay, and also this irons, that means the coils of iron will be used for manufacturing industries also. And the second property, important property of metal is ductility. Metals are normally ductile. So, which means that it can be drawn into thin wires. Metals can be drawn into thin wires. So, by drawing them into wires, for example, copper, which can be used as electrical gadgets, that means wires, isn't it? So, ductility is a property which allows the metals to be drawn into wires, is a property, very important property. Like malleability, ductility is also one of the main property of metals. And most of the metals are ductile, but all the metals are not equally ductile, because due to the hardness and toughness and how the atoms are compactly arranged, due to that only we can determine the ductile property. If the atoms are freely arranged, then the ductility of the metals will be somewhat easier. But if the atoms are so closely packed, then the ductility will be somewhat less, so that the wires made of those metals, that means the tough metals, due to the high ductility will be strong enough. Ductility is a property where the metals can be drawn into thin wires. For example, gold, copper, silver and iron. You could have known about Rutherford's experiment, isn't it, children? So, in Rutherford experiment, Rutherford used gold foil for his experiment to study the structure of an atom, right. So, because of the malleable nature, gold is used for that purpose, and it can be drawn into thin wires so that ornaments can be made very easily. Then copper can be drawn into thin wires so that they can be used, that means the copper wire can be used for electricity, that means what, conducting electricity, cable wires what we are using at home for domestic purpose. And silver, the wire of silver, as it is expensive only, we are using copper, which is cheap and best conductor of electricity than silver. Okay, and iron of course can be used and drawn into wires, but it will not be that much available for the ductile property, that means what, drawing wires. So, that we are using normally copper for drawing the wires for electrical gadget purposes. So, most ductile metal, if you check, it is gold, okay, none other than gold. So, 1 gram of gold can be drawn into a wire of 2 kilometers of length. So, if you take 1 gram of gold, that 1 gram of gold can be beaten into thin sheet and the wire can be drawn. So, the length of the wire will be 2 kilometer length. It has high ductile capacity. And next, aluminium and copper. Copper and aluminium are the other metals which have high ductility, so that they can be drawn into wires. See, if you check the wires of copper, you could have seen this in the cables. Okay, and aluminium also can be used for drawing the wires. So, which can be used to conduct the electricity. So, aluminium and copper wires you could have seen in the motors, coils of the motors, and as well as the other gadgets. So, if you check those gadgets, if you could see that the coil is made of copper wire and aluminium wires only. Iron, magnesium and tungsten are the other metals, but they have less ductile capacity only. Okay. So, that if you check that means magnesium, you could see the ribbon, okay, magnesium ribbon, which can be used in the laboratory for making magnesium oxide, because magnesium oxide is not a stable salt. So, which can be produced in the laboratory only. So, for preparing the magnesium oxide salt, what we have to do? Magnesium ribbon, that means the magnesium metal ribbon has to be taken and it should be heated, so that you will be getting white color ash. So, that white ash is nothing but magnesium oxide. Okay, so, that can be used for the laboratory purpose, that means experimental processes. Okay. If you take iron, that will be used for making this wire gas. Do you remember, children? This wire gas will be used for experimental purpose on the tripod stand for burning the apparatus. Okay, for burning purposes we will be using this wire gas, so that heat will be distributed equally, so that the content which is kept in the conical flask or a test tube will be heated properly by proper distribution of heat. So, this is wire gas which is made up of iron, and magnesium ribbon which is used for making magnesium oxide, and tungsten filament will be used for making the filament of bulbs for electricity. And metals, usually they are the good conductors of heat and electricity, because as I said, they have free electrons, that means freely moving electrons. Due to the free moving electrons, they will be able to conduct heat and electricity. Okay, normally copper and aluminium having good conductive capacity, they will be used for conduction of electricity as well as heat. That is why most of the metals, that means utensils, are made up of copper to save time as well as to save energy, because it is a very good conductor of electricity as well as heat. And silver metal is also one of the good conductor, best conductor of heat as well as electricity, but it is somewhat expensive than copper, so that we are using copper for electrical gadgets, but silver can be made into utensils and also for thermal conductivity, as it has high thermal conductivity. Most of the utensils are made of silver, so that we can save time as well as energy, so that easy cooking, that means the time will be saved. Okay. Copper and aluminium are very good conductors of heat. That is why the cooking utensils are made of copper and aluminium utensils, you could see here. Okay. Next, mercury and lead are the poor conductors of electricity. That is why mercury is used in the laboratory in thermometers as well as for other apparatus like measuring the heat. Okay, so we will be using the mercury. So, as it has a poor conductivity, poor conductant capacity, it will not be easily melted, so that we can use it for measuring the temperature. Even lead also, as they are the poor conductors of heat, we can use them. And mercury is the liquid metal. Electrical conductance capacity of metals. Why metals can conduct electricity? What is the property do they have? What property do they have so that they can conduct electricity? If you check, they have free electrons, I said, okay, as they have free electrons. For example, if you take any metals, no, the metals will be having free electrons on the surface, right. So, actually the atoms are arranged like this. If you take an atom, if it is a metal, the metal will be having protons and neutrons inside the nucleus and electron will be revolving around. So, these electrons, they will be just moving out from the orbit due to gaining energy. Okay, they gain energy from the surrounding and the electron will get excited. Excited means what? They will be getting promoted from lower energy to higher energy level. So that these electrons will become free electron now. So as it is available, okay, these free electrons and the free ions will carry the electricity. Okay. So, copper and aluminium are the metals which have good conductivity capacity. Okay. They are highly used for making the wires of gadgets. Okay. So, this is how the atoms will be having the free ions, the metal ions are available so that they will be conducting electricity. So, these are the atoms which are available, they are compactly packed. When the metal ions are coming out, okay, those metal ions are very much available for the electrons to be, that means what? Electricity is nothing but flow of electrons. So, they can be conducted very easily. When you take the metals like iron and mercury, they offer comparatively greater resistivity, which means that what? The conduction capacity can be restricted, okay, so that they have lower electrical conductivity only. Now, the electrical wires, if you take that means for a domestic purpose we are using the wires, but normally those wires are covered with PVC cables, isn't it? So, that PVC is a non-conductor, that means insulator. So, that what happened normally when we cannot touch the wires using our bare hands, if we touch, what happened, immediately we could feel the shock. Okay, so, when it is used, when the wires are covered with, PVC, okay, polyvinyl chloride, which is nothing but polyvinyl chloride. So, when we use the PVC to cover those wires, no, we can avoid, that means short circuit as well as shocking, okay, that means electrical shock can be avoided. So, because PVC is an insulator, insulator means what? Poor conductor of electricity. What is mean by insulator? Poor conductor of electricity. Okay, so that it will not conduct electricity. So, it will be very safe to use PVC wires on the cables, so that we can prevent, we can avoid getting electric shocks. Okay. Metals are lustrous. The next property is what? Lustrous. Lustrous means what? Shiny appearance. They have shiny appearance. Okay. So, it means that metals have shiny appearance. For example, if you check gold, it is glittering a metal, isn't it? It is a glittering metal, even silver also. That is why gold and silver are used mainly for making ornaments. And when you take copper, is also a shiny metal only, which is reddish brown in color, which gives the shiny appearance. And the property of metals having the shiny surface is only called as what? Metallic lustre, which is only called as what? Metallic lustre. Okay. So, metallic lustre means what? It is nothing but the shiny appearance possessed by the metals is actually called as metallic lustre. And the shiny appearance makes them useful in making jewellery and decoration pieces. Okay, due to that lustrous property, that means they have the shiny appearance, so that only they will be used for making jewelleries. Okay, so because jewels have to be glittered, then only it will be looking nice, it will give the nice look, isn't it? And then decoration pieces means we can use those metals for puja rooms for decoration, as well as the puja vessels can also be made, and other decorative items also can be made using these metals. And the shiny appearance of metals make them good reflectors of light, that is why they are giving the glittering nature. Okay, so as they have good reflectors, reflecting tendency, they will be able to give the tendency of glittering nature. Okay. Then tarnishing of metals. Why do we need to learn this tarnishing of metals? Because we have learned the lustrous capacity. As the metals are lustrous in nature so easily, because they have the shiny surface, isn't it? So the surface are very much available for the metals to get tarnished. Tarnish means what? Dull appearance. Okay, dull appearance. Right? The metals will be attaining dull appearance very easily. Right? So how do they attain a dull appearance? Because when these metals are exposed to the gases or other agents like acid or water or moisture from the atmosphere, gases like oxygen, sulfur or carbon dioxide, when these are getting contact with the metal surface, normally the shiny appearance of the metal will be getting tarnished. Okay. So the metals have shiny appearance only when they are fresh. So slowly when they are exposed to air, what happened? The agents like water or acid or atmospheric gases will get contact on the surface, and automatically the metal will get dull appearance. That is only called as what? Tarnishing. Okay, if you see this one, no, this is copper coin. You could see the dull appearance of the coin. And iron, okay, the articles made of iron also will get rust very easily due to the moisture and water, and then oxygen also. Okay, rust is nothing but what? It is a combination of iron with moisture and then oxygen. And next, this is a silver metal. Silver metal becomes black due to the that means what? Attack of sulfur from the atmosphere. Metals are generally hard. The next property is the hardness of the metals. Okay. So why do this hardness? Metals possess a hard tendency. Generally they are hard, but all the metals are not equally hard, because it varies from one metal to other metal. The hardness varies from one metal to other metal. If you take iron, it is the hardest metal. If you take, that means strong, and if it is tough also. Whereas if you take the other metals like copper, it is somewhat, that means comparatively less harder than iron. So the hardness differ from one metal to the other metal. The hardness varies from metal to metal due to the compactability of the atoms actually. Metals like iron, copper, aluminium, they are hard enough. That is why they can be used for making utensils and the other articles which are used as appliances at home also. Okay, but some of the metals, some exceptions are there. Common exceptions, there are two exceptional metals are there. One is sodium and the other one is potassium. They are the metals, but they have soft nature. Okay, that is why they can be cut with a knife, even they can be cut with knife. So soft they are, sodium and potassium, and also sodium and potassium are highly reactive metals. That is why normally whenever it is preserved in the laboratory or any other places, they will be immersed in kerosene to prevent the activity of these metals with the atmospheric contacts. Metals are strong, and the strongness is due to as I said, no, the atoms, the metallic bonds are very strong. Due to the strong force of attraction, they become so strong. Okay, due to that strongness only they hold large weight without snapping. Without snapping means what? Without breaking. For example, if you take iron metal, which is in the form of steel, is very strong and hence it is used for construction works. And also you would have seen in the gym also children, they will be using the iron, that means the steel, in the form of steel, iron will be used as exercise equipments like dumbbell and weightlifting. Okay, for that purpose they will be using, and for construction work, that is very, very important, because iron, when it is used for construction work, then the building will be strong. Okay. And sodium and potassium, here also we have the exceptions, like sodium and potassium are the two metals which are exceptional, because they are soft, they are not hard and they are not strong. Okay, they are soft metals, so that they can be cut with the knife, as well as they can be molded into any shape without using external heat energy. Okay. Metals are solids at room temperature. This is another physical property. Most of the metals are solid in room temperature. Exception is what? Mercury, because mercury is a liquid metal. Okay. So, but only metal, that is mercury, which is available in liquid state. You could see here, isn't it? Liquid state. Mercury is in liquid state. But other metals like copper, aluminium, iron, gold, zinc, magnesium, all the metals are available in solid state. Metals have high melting and high boiling point. And here we have some ranges of melting and boiling point of some of the metals. If you take iron, okay, which is the hardest and strongest metal, and which has the melting point ranges in Celsius, 1535 degrees Celsius is the range of melting point, and its boiling point is 2862 degrees Celsius. And the next metal which has somewhat less melting and boiling point than iron is copper. So, copper has the melting point ranges 1083 degrees Celsius, and 2562 degrees Celsius is the boiling point range of copper. Next metal is sodium. Sodium, potassium, gallium, cesium, these are all the soft metals. Actually, gallium and cesium are easily meltable metals. That means what? Under room temperature they become liquid state. Okay, so normally they possess low melting and low boiling point only. As sodium and potassium are the soft metals, even they have low melting and low boiling point compared to the other hard metals like iron and copper. Okay. So, the next cesium and gallium, you could see children, they will be started melting when it is kept on the palm itself. But iron, which is the metal, okay, will have a high melting point, will become molten iron only when external heat energy is supplied. Large amount of heat energy should be supplied. Okay children, so the other properties we will discuss in the next class. Thank you.